It's GodLogic.
All right. Good evening, gentlemen. How are you guys?
Good evening. We're doing well. How are you?
Not bad, not bad. All right. So, quick disclaimer.
Okay.
I'm speaking for myself. I'm not a subject matter expert. I am a practicing Muslim.
All
I'm
right.
going to speak for myself. So, first question I want to ask you is, when you say reject the prophets, which prophets are we talking about?
All of them.
You do reject them.
Every last one
So
of them.
we don't reject them. Islam
do.
acknowledges 120,000 prophets.
All right. So let me ask you this, bro. Can you believe in the prophets and reject their message?
No.
I agree with you 100%. I agree with you 100%. So
Okay.
look, you believe in Prophet Dawood, right?
Yes.
Okay. And he was given the Zabur, the Psalms.
Yes.
And I want to show you something in the Psalms, and I want to see if you accept or reject it. Okay.
Okay.
So it says this. It says, "I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. My heart is like wax. It is melted within my breast. My strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue sticks to my jaws. You lay me in the dust of death. For dogs encompass me. A company of evildoers encircles me. They have pierced my hands and my feet. I can count all my bones. They stare and gloat over me. They divide my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots." So what do you think that David is talking about, who is surrounded by his enemies, being rejected and ridiculed, mocked, stripped of his clothes, have his clothes gambled over, and has his hands and his feet pierced?
So I'm gonna give you two answers. Number one, many prophets of God have been tortured. But number two, it sounds like Jesus.
All right. I like that.
So let me add something. So you're saying it sounds like Jesus, but you don't believe Jesus was pierced, right? His hands and feet?
We believe that right before crucifixion, his soul was sent to heaven.
No, yeah, so but I'm not asking that. This is talking about his hands and
Physical
feet
body,
being
yes.
pierced.
The physical body, yes.
The what?
The physical body, yes.
The physical
So then
body, yes.
are you Ismaili or Ahmadi?
I am neither.
Well, because traditional Sunni Islam does not believe Jesus was crucified at all, but someone was made to look like him. So either you're Quran only, and you're coming up with your understanding, or you're Ismaili or Ahmadiyya. You're one of those.
I'm neither. I'm Shia.
Okay, so are you saying in Shia tradition that you deny that someone was made to look like Jesus and he died in his place?
No, we do believe that who took his place was actually Judas.
So then why did you say that the physical part, yes, you don't believe Jesus was physically crucified. Someone else died. So but you just said it sounds like Jesus. If it sounds like Jesus, that means Jesus was pierced, his hands and feet, that means he was nailed to the cross. But you say the Shia believe it was Judas.
Yes, but look, when you describe who he is, that's your, first of all, I shouldn't say you, is your belief Christianity?
Okay, but hold on. You know he quoted the Psalm, it's written 1,000 years before Jesus. So you're saying that David also believes, like we do, that Jesus was crucified?
I'm not a subject matter expert on that. I can't answer that question.
Okay, well, that was his point. His point is, if you understand his argument, that Prophet David, by Wahi, revelation from the Holy Spirit, foretold that the one to come would have his hands and feet pierced. And he wrote this 1,000 years before. So David is already telling us beforehand what will happen to Messiah, that he'd be pierced through his hands and feet. And when Jesus comes and he's pierced on the cross, killed on the cross, that means David agrees with us and agrees with the New Testament, but he disagrees with you, Shia. So how do you believe in David? That's his point.
Okay, then we're looking at two different points, because I was looking at the question by itself, which is rejecting prophets. We acknowledge the prophets. We can dispute over details, but it's not like we don't believe in Jesus or we don't believe in any of the prophets that came before him.
No, but remember,
I'm looking at the question exactly how it's written. That's where I'm answering.
Yeah, but remember what I said. I asked you, can you say that you believe in the prophets but reject their message that they came with? You said no. You got to believe in their message in order to believe in the prophets, right? So we both agreed on that foundation. So I showed you the message that David came with. The revelation that David came with says that Jesus, the Messiah, will be crucified, will have his hands and his feet pierced, will be ridiculed and mocked, surrounded by his enemies, have his clothes gambled over. But you reject this. So that means you reject the prophets, since you reject the message that he came with.
If that's the case, then no. If we go according to that statement, right, then every Jewish person is also rejecting the prophet as well.
Yes. So the ones.
So then why is your title saying Muslims answer? Why are we?
Because you're my target audience tonight.
Yeah, we're not dealing with rabbinic Jews.
I understand. Okay.
We're not dealing with rabbinic Jews, but since you believe Judas died in Jesus' place,
yeah.
Now who made Judas look like Jesus?
I don't know the answer to that.
Oh, well, you're very honest. I like you. Okay, but
why am I gonna lie about something?
No,
trust me, your demeanor so far is very refreshing to what we're used to.
And you're proof that if someone's respectful, we can have a very nice conversation. But coming
Absolutely. Back to and we should have these conversations. At the end of the day, I think people focus too much on proving themselves right rather than discussing.
Right.
So going back to the topic of Jesus, right? So for example, you read the prophecy that Dawood read, right? That he stated and so forth, right?
Yeah.
And we're basing everything on that. But what about all the other messages that Jesus said? Why are we focusing only on his crucifixion
Okay, well, we
or
could-
him being the Son of God rather than talking about everything good
All
that
right,
he
well,
talked
since you
about?
mentioned that, if I show you from David that he agrees with the New Testament that the king is God's son, begotten of God, which disagrees with the Quran, are you going to now see that you have a problem? Psalm chapter 2.
No.
Psalm chapter
No.
2. Well, you should have a problem because this disagrees with the Quran. Psalm 2, again written about 1,000 years before Christ. Notice what Psalm 2 says about the anointed king. In fact, so you can know it's about Messiah if you read Psalm 2, verse 2. What does it say?
It says, the kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his Messiah.
Messiah. The word here in Hebrew is Mashiach. Shicho, meaning his Messiah. So it's saying that the rulers oppose God and the Messiah. And then if you read verse 7 all the way to 9, look what God says to the Messiah.
I will tell of the decree. The Lord said to me, you are my son. Today I have begotten you.
Now, right there, your Quran says, Lam yalid wa lam yulad. He neither begets nor is begotten. But here, Psalm 2, written 1,000 years before Christ, says that the Messiah, Mashiach, is God's son, and God begets him to rule over all the nations. Do you agree with that?
I can't agree with that. I cannot. It goes against the core foundation of my belief.
And
So my belief is if you attach any relationship other than the created to God, you dilute God's power. The Islamic belief is that God is Almighty. He's the maker of all. He's the end all be all. But if you bring a son or any other relationship to God, then you're diluting his powers. You're diluting who he is as God himself.
Is God almighty enough to have a son without being diluted? Because you just said he's almighty.
I think the relationship dilutes him. I would say that.
I'm going by your definition. You said he's almighty, but now you're saying he's not mighty enough to have a son without being diluted. So it can't be both.
I won't argue for the sake of argue. I say yes, he could have a son because God can do anything, right?
So he can have a son without diluting him, right?
He can, but then he would though.
But David says he does have a son, and Jesus says he does have a son, and then Jesus says, I'm his son, and if you believe me, you'll be his sons. So these prophets are disagreeing with the Quran. So why should we go with the Quran?
I'm not here to defend the Quran. I'm here to go back to your question of.
Well, that was his question. The prophets. You're not accepting the message of the prophets. That's his question. Why don't you accept their message?
I think in order for me to accept their message, I would have to believe that is their message. And that's probably the core foundation is that most Muslims probably don't believe that that was the message that they sent.
All right, so you're telling me you want me to believe that the Hebrew scriptures, because the Psalms are also in the hands of the Jews. So you ask the rabbi to read Psalm 2:7 for you, and it's going to say the same thing that our translations say, because we both accept the Old Testament. They don't call it Old Testament, but it's the same scriptures. But you're telling me then the Jews agreed to change their scriptures to agree with our theology. Which Jew in his right mind would allow the Old Testament to be changed to agree with Christian theology?
I have no answer to that one because you got it. I don't think a Jew would do that. You're right. If it's gonna go against their religion or it's gonna go pin them against them, they wouldn't do that. So I would have to give you the point on that one. You went on that one.
Okay, so then why does Psalm, which is a book in the hands of the Jews, and they have their own copies of it, and we have copies of it, agree with the New Testament? God's Messiah, King, is God's son. So they both agree over against Islam.
Probably the same reason that not every Jew is a Christian right now is because they probably believe that Jesus wasn't the Messiah. The Muslims also believe that the Messiah hasn't come yet.
Okay, but even if that's the case, they do believe when Messiah comes, he'll be the Son of God. So we still agree Messiah is God's son. Why then do we both agree that Messiah is God's son and he'll rule the nations, not just his son? All nations will be subject to him forever, all of which you deny.
So I'm gonna throw in my personal belief on this, and I don't know if it's gonna answer your question. We do believe that a Messiah is going to come, and he's going to come with Jesus. So we're not saying that they're two in one.
No, not Messiah. No, you believe Mahdi is coming, not Messiah.
Exactly. Yes.
But you said Messiah is coming with Jesus. No, Jesus is Messiah, but Mahdi will come.
Yes.
And you believe it's the 12th Imam, right?
Yes.
And he'll also appear with the Quran that he took with him.
Yes.
Okay, I want everyone to ask because a lot of people don't know what Shia believe, and not all Shia believe the same. But so people understand what you believe. I just want to be here.
Yes.
He is the particular Shia that believes that the 12th Imam is hidden. He's not that he's alive, he's hidden. He will reappear in the latter days with the true Quran, and then Messiah, Jesus will come, and they'll join forces together, correct?
Correct.
And so he has the true Quran, right?
Correct.
That's why the Sunnis say the Shia don't believe the Quran is preserved.
Interesting.
No, I can't answer on that one. What I can tell you is that, again, I'm going to talk about myself. What we believe is that the Sunni, the Shiites, all the sects have the same Quran.
No,
it's just the translation.
No. We're not. The Mahdi is not bringing translations, bringing the Arabic Quran.
No.
Let's be honest, because I know your sources, and I'm not attacking you. Yes, you do follow the Quran today, but you admit that the true Quran is with Mahdi, and that true Quran has more verses than what you follow today. You accept today's Quran.
No, I don't believe that. No, I don't believe that.
So what true Quran is he bringing then?
I'll be very honest with you. I have to take back my statement. I believe the true Quran he's going to bring is the same Quran that's here today.
Well, go back and read your sources again. That's not what they teach, but that's okay.
I will go back and do that, but that's not my belief.
Okay, now, well, that's fine. I mean, because like you said, you're representing yourself. You may not know too much about Shia stuff. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. But coming back to the issue, his point was this. I want you to understand his point.
Yeah.
When the Muslim tells us they believe in the message of the prophets, but then we show them from the Bible, here are the scriptures attributed to the prophets, Old Testament, New Testament, and these two testaments agree God is the Father, Messiah is the Son, Messiah will rule forever, and everyone must serve him. Both testaments. The Quran denies that. It says Messiah is not the Son of God, and he's not going to rule forever. Because you don't believe Jesus when he comes, he'll rule forever. You believe he's going to die, right?
Correct. And that's what's going to set off Judgment Day.
And do you believe he's going to get married?
I don't know. I haven't gone deep dived into that.
Okay, find out. Just for the Christians here, the Sunnis do believe Jesus comes for 40 years to reign, but he's going to get married, and he's going to have children, and he's going to be buried next to Muhammad. That's not the Messiah of the Old Testament, of the Psalms of David, or Daniel, or the Messiah of the New Testament. Both Jewish scriptures, New Testament agree, Messiah will rule forever. He lives forever. His kingdom is indestructible. Everyone must submit to him in all languages. So everyone, all Arabs, everyone must submit to him, and he'll rule over them forever. Do you accept that? The Messiah will rule forever, and everyone will be subject to him?
I also do believe in the 40-year ruling. Is that I do believe that Jesus and Mehdi will rule for 40 years. We'll have peace on earth, and what heaven on earth is supposed to be. And then with their deaths is what's gonna send off the Judgment Day, and then we go into the day.
So you don't believe?
And then we'll heaven.
Well, that was my point. You don't believe Messiah is going to rule forever, and that all nations will be subject to him, right?
If you say the word forever,
no, I
then
mean,
where does
never
it
ends. Forever, ever, never ends.
Yes, but then if we do that, then where does the concept of heaven or hell come from?
What's that got to do with heaven and hell? Those who reject his rule will be destroyed in hell.
Well, no. Okay, so those who accept will be what? Staying on
Will
earth?
live with him forever and ever, and he will rule over them forever and ever. So do you accept that? Right? Do you believe that about Messiah?
No, I don't believe that. That's what I'm asking you. I'm asking you, when you say rule forever and ever, will it be on earth?
Yes, because unlike you, Old Testament, New Testament teach, God's kingdom will be on earth, and God will change the earth forever and ever. You have this concept that you'll all be in Jannah, so then what happens to earth? It's going to be wiped out?
I don't know. Maybe I don't know what's going to happen.
Okay. So then let's keep on this, so we don't go too far drift. The Old Testament, New Testament agree. Messiah. We believe it's Jesus, you and me. Those Jews who don't accept Jesus, reject him. Okay, that's fine. But we both agree, Old Testament, New Testament, Jews and Christians agree, the Messiah will be a king whose kingdom will never end, never be destroyed, and he will rule over all people forever, and they must serve him forever. Do you accept that about Messiah?
No.
But then again, Old Testament says yes, New Testament agrees, says yes. So you have the prophets of the Old Testament and Jesus and the New Testament that agree on this over against Islam. So why should we follow Islam? And how in the world can you say you believe the message of the prophets?
It probably goes to the core foundation of that Muslims are not going to accept the Old or the New Testament.
Why?
And then probably the same reason why at each step of the way the religions get created. So when you have Judaism that came about, right, they're going to accept their own religion. When Christianity came about, they acknowledged the Old Testament, but they didn't turn into Jews, did they? They became Christians. And as the new chapter came out and Islam came out, was, as we claim, as you're very well versed in your religious knowledge, you already know that we claim to be the last religion of God.
He doesn't know anything.
No. The only problem with the analogy is the New Testament, if it contradicts the Old Testament and doesn't agree with it, then the Jews would have a reason to reject it. Meaning, if a Jew comes and says, your New Testament disagrees with what the Old Testament says, it can't be from the same God, they would have us there. But our argument,
having Jews accepted Christianity then?
There are hundreds of thousands who have. I don't know what you're talking about. One for Israel is a prominent organization in Israel, and they have a YouTube channel website where they argue with Jews, proving from the Old Testament Jesus is Messiah and they should accept the New Testament. So what do you mean they have? Hundreds of thousands are accepting.
You're educating me along the way, and it's something new.
Yeah, one for Israel. So, it's on YouTube. You go watch their videos. It's in English and Hebrew. They write articles. They do sessions. They respond to the rabbis.
That's
hundreds of thousands. In fact,
now that's something I'm going to research as well. It's something new that I'm learning today.
Yeah, and the first Christians were Jews. They were not Indians. They were Jews. But my point is, if the New Testament contradicts the Old Testament, then the Jews would have every reason to reject Christianity. That's one of their reasons. They say, well, your New Testament doesn't agree. And our argument is, no, it does. It doesn't contradict. But, and I gave you some similarities. New Testament agrees with the Old Testament. Messiah is the king who rules forever. All must serve Messiah forever. He is the Son of God. God is the Father to his people. The problem with the Quran is it doesn't agree with either New Testament or Old Testament because Allah is not a father in the Quran. Messiah is not his son. And he doesn't rule forever. and people are not expected to serve Messiah forever. So not only contradicts New Testament, contradicts Old Testament. So that's why Christians say no to the Quran, and Jews who know their Old Testament say no to the Quran.
Well, look, I'm going to end this live for me now because at the end of the day, I guess you guys made your point. Because yes, if we go according to acknowledging the Old Testament and the New Testament, then yes, Muslims are rejecting prophets. But as far as Muslim and Islam is concerned, yes, according to the Quran, we're not rejecting it.
Okay.
So I mean, that's where I will end my argument.
Come back again so we can talk.
Yeah.
It's God, not you.